Imagine a world where biodiversity no longer refers to the variety of species, but the varieties of political views among the human race. This may be our future due to prioritizing urbanization and development over species existence. Biodiversity loss is currently occurring at an increasing rate, as well as the loss of ecosystem services. Although the presence of both biodiversity and ecosystem services is incredibly beneficial to the human race, many people are not aware of the cost that living our comfortable lives takes on the ecosystem. Let us explain. We are currently in the midst of the 6th great extinction. There is always a background rate of extinctions in which species will naturally go extinct, but we are currently losing a large amount of species in a short amount of time. The difference between this extinction and those long in the past is that this one is largely anthropogenic, or caused by humans. We are currently losing so much biodiversity through several extinctions and severe population declines of several species. Biodiversity can be difficult to define, but essentially has to do with the variety and differences between organisms present within an ecosystem or the world. A high amount of biodiversity within an ecosystem is generally thought to be a healthier and more stable ecosystem. In general, it can be hard to define biodiversity because defining a species is complicated, and there are many different ways of doing it, as well as opinions on how it should be done. Ecosystems consist of incredibly complicated webs full of many different interactions that occur between species, individuals, and the environment. In order for an ecosystem to function altogether, there needs to be organisms filling these roles. Without some of these roles being filled, we experience major changes within the environment and in many cases habitat degradation. There is also such a thing as functional extinction. This occurs when a species that previously played an important role in their ecosystem has declined in population numbers so much that they no longer play a role within the ecosystem. This can be seen in the population of Chelonia-mitis, or the green sea turtle, which were once numerous in the Caribbean, but their populations have now decreased to 1/10 of their original population. The presence of green sea turtles was once an extremely important part of the ecosystem. This species grazed on seagrass beds, but with the decline of the turtles, the seagrass beds have also severely declined. This may seem backwards, but the seagrasses need to be clipped short in order to reduce the deposition of sediments and maintain the seagrass community. Through the decline of these turtles, the seagrasses are prone to decomposition and disease. The absence of the green sea turtle has drastically changed the disturbance regimes, nutrient cycling, and many ecosystem services associated with these areas. As the biodiversity of habitats increases, so does the amount of ecosystem services associated with the habitat. In this sense, helping maintain habitat biodiversity benefits human populations by providing us with many ecosystem services. Ecosystem services refer to the benefits that humans receive from the environment. This may include things ranging from food consumption or wood for logging to a beautiful view or a distressing getaway in nature, to things like services such as flood or erosion prevention. Ecosystem services can be categorized in 4 ways: provisioning ecosystem services, regulating ecosystem services, habitat and supporting ecosystem services, and cultural ecosystem services. Provisioning ecosystem services are goods provided by nature that are used as fuel, food, drinking water, building materials, and medicines. Regulating ecosystem services control the natural processes in ways that are favorable to humans. This might include coastal marshes, mangroves, or coral reefs that help reduce flood damage by dampening storm surges. Habitat or supporting ecosystem services maintain biodiversity, which in turn creates all other categories because the biodiversity creates and drives ecosystem services. Cultural ecosystem services are any emotional, psychological, and recreational benefits that people obtain from nature. This can drastically improve a person's physical and mental health. Not many people realize just how much they benefit from the environment around them. Because of this, ecosystem services tend to be monetized. One way that we tend to make the concept of ecosystem services accessible to the general public is by assigning them monetary values. By doing this, we can convince people that by conserving these ecosystem services, they are actually saving money, and it shows just how important and beneficial it can be in that way. This, however, can be extremely controversial, because we are putting a price on nature and claiming ownership of the environment. Through this, we look at nature as something we can make money off of, and then we begin to prioritize certain parts of nature just because of the benefits it gives us. Although there are many examples of biodiversity loss and therefore a decrease in ecosystem services, one specific occurrence is in a globally rare habitat called a black oak savanna. What makes these savannas so unique is that they are made up of a forest, a prairie, and a wetland all rolled into one habitat. This diverse ecosystem allows for a wide range of plants and animals, many of which are now threatened or endangered, including the Karner blue butterfly, the loggerhead shrike, and the Bell's vireo. Much restoration and conservation work still needs to be done in order to maintain the current biodiversity and hopefully prevent the loss of essential plant and animal species. To help maintain the animal biodiversity in this rare habitat, conservationists should first focus on restoring the native vegetation. According to a study performed by Young D. Choi and colleagues, the amount of vegetation available is largely responsible for the amount of species richness in an area, as shown in the figure. Graph A shows a clear correlation between the native forb richness of the location and the total number of nearby species. This could imply that efforts done to help restore native plants may also help to restore native animal species. Graph B represents the relationship between the native forb cover and the ground coverage of exotic grasses. As the reader can see, it is evident that there is a negative correlation here as well. This is partially due to the fact that the exotic grasses are growing and spreading at a much faster rate than the native plants are here. So they take over as an invasive species would. This study could help conservationists to decide their next plans of action because it gives at least one clear factor that is negatively impacting these rare habitats, the exotic grasses. This provides one possible starting point, working on getting rid of the exotic grasses and exchanging them for native plants such as black oak saplings, wood lupine, or even tree saplings. The loss of biological diversity and ecosystem services all over the planet are interconnected issues that threaten many species and landscapes. Human activity continues to be the primary driver of extinction for endangered species of plants and animals that fill crucial roles to the stability and strength of ecosystems that regulate Earth's natural processes. While these issues exist on a complex global scale, there are steps everyone can take to increase awareness of conservation concerns and play our part to combat the unprecedented global loss of biological diversity. Actions as simple as looking at labels before buying things to find more sustainable products, using less plastic, and reducing overall consumption can lower demands for products that are continuing environmental degradation in places that serve as habitat to threatened or endangered species. Possibly the most important thing each of us can do is be informed about environmental issues and talk about these things with friends and family. An increase in general knowledge of this topic can contribute to globally effective conservation efforts because, with this in mind, mankind is able to further understand how our actions affect the world around us. We can begin to identify species most at risk for extinction, set goals for conservation and preservation of ecosystems, and develop management plans aimed to preserve and restore populations before it's too late.